My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
Okay. That was do we even call that a press conference? Little speech yesterday from Donald Trump, Liberation Day, as he called it. Joining me now, one of my favorites, John Carney, Breitbart News and Finance and Economics editor. I don't know why I always screw up poor John's title. Okay, John, beyond the opinion portion, which we will get to, what did he actually do yesterday? There's a lot of bunk information out there. What happened?
So he announced that we were putting on two different kinds of tariffs onto the rest of the world. The first is what I'll call a baseline universal tariff, which is 10% tariff. That's what it's called like a cover charge. Everybody who wants to sell into the US market is going to face a 10% tariff on everything they sell into the US market. Then there is the reciprocal tariffs, which I'll just call the penalty tariffs, which is to say, the tariff that if you have been running a trade surplus against the US, so our trade deficit, for a long time, if you have a structural trade deficit, you are going to face a much higher tariff than the 10%. It is going to be keyed off the size of the trade imbalance. So that's what we're doing here. We are putting in place the trade, a tariff that is meant to offset the trade imbalance that already exists.
Okay, let's talk about that whole trade deficit thing, because the opposite of that argument is, well, why do we care about having a trade deficit? It sounds bad, but I buy things from the grocery store. The grocery store doesn't buy things with me. We have a trade deficit, but it works out for both of us. So what's the answer for that?
Well, sure. You have a trade deficit with your grocery store, so do I. But you have a trade surplus with your employer. In other words, you are getting a lot more from your employer than you spend with them. If you were to have run systemic trade deficits with everybody else, you would not have any savings at all. What you would be doing is slowly going broke, maybe quickly going broke, depending on how fast you're running up your deficit. The normal way trade is supposed to work is, sure, you have a trade deficit with some countries or at some times, and sometimes you have a trade surplus. That's not the way the trade system, the global trading system, has been working. The US is, in fact, the absorber of the surplus production of everybody else in the world. Most countries sell us much more than we sell to them, and there's not somebody else who's absorbing that excess besides us. So what that means is that we are, like in your example, the guy who doesn't have a trade surplus to offset the trade deficit he's running against the grocery store. It's just deficit all the way down. We're slowly deteriorating our economy. It was basically a managed decline of the US economy. And what Trump announced this week is that that's over. We're not doing it the way we have been doing it. We're changing things so that the system will be more balanced towards the US workers than it has been, frankly, for a few generations since World War II.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is issuing a little warning to other countries. Here he was.
My advice to every country right now is do not retaliate. Sit back, take it in. Let's see how it goes, because if you retaliate, there will be escalation. If you don't retaliate, this is the high water mark.
Okay, or are they going to retaliate?
So I think some countries will put it to the test, right? You know, this is like we put our chips on the table. We made a bet. Some countries are going to see if we're bluffing, right? So they'll call or they'll raise, and we'll see what happens. I think most countries are going to reasonably conclude that Donald Trump isn't bluffing about trade, that he came out with tariffs that were even higher than people thought they would be. So what does that tell you? It tells you that he's not kidding around here. You really don't want to try to retaliate. I think a lot of countries are going to very quickly say, whoa, 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 we didn't realize we were treating you that bad. We didn't know how serious you were about this. Let us come in, see what we can do. We'll try to set this right. We're already hearing, in fact, that trade ministers around the world are in touch with Washington, D.C., Vietnam. They came out of this with a very high tariff, saying, let us come in, let's fix this. We think we can repair this. So I don't think we're going to get retaliation. I think we're going to get cooperation.
Okay, speaking of Vietnam, we'll make it about them because they already said they're going to cooperate. And it's not that I'm emotionally invested in Vietnam or their economy at all, but if they're going to cooperate, that means on some level they're going to bring in less money. Are we concerned at all about other nations going into the toilet economically because they're trying to accommodate us?
I actually don't think so. A lot of these things that are going on in these countries benefit a small segment of their country, but not their entire country. So in other words, they benefit the special interests in their country who, like, let's say, own the Chinese owners of manufacturing plants in Vietnam, or frankly, Nike, may benefit a lot. But they actually are helped by wage suppression in their country. One of the ways a country like Vietnam can fix this is by increasing the incomes of its own workers, allowing more of the share of their GDP to go to their workers. That will create more demand for stuff from the US. It'll make the Vietnamese people better off and create more demand for US stuff. Trade wars really are class wars. They are the elites of countries all around the world cooperating with each other to make each other rich. I think we can enrich US workers while also helping the Vietnamese workers.
John, most Americans don't work in factories. Now, everybody who watches this show knows I am very much pro-factory, pro-manufacturing, pro-American, but most Americans, when it comes to their economic interests, are worried about the cost of goods and services. That's just most people buy things and they want those prices to go back down in some way to what they used to be because you can't afford a daggone thing anymore. Does this help? When will it help? When do we see prices come down is what I'm asking.
So I do think it will help on a longer term basis, not immediately. I do think there will be some price increases. I don't think they're going to be that much. I don't think they're going to, we won't see anything like what we saw during the Biden years where inflation got up to 9%. But I do think we'll see a 0.5 point of extra inflation. I don't think that lasts. So in other words, we'll get a one-time price hike in some things subject to tariffs, but only part of the tariff will get passed through to consumers. And once that comes through, you won't get year after year after year of price hikes. So I think we'll have a one-time adjustment. But further on down the road, as we are producing more goods and services more efficiently in the United States, when production is not being captured by the inefficient communist industrial policy of Beijing or the inefficient policies of Berlin, frankly, it's not just the communists in China, it is the socialist and protectionist, mercantilist, predatory class in Europe that is also doing this. When we are able to move trade away from where they have located it into places where stuff could actually be efficiently produced, I think we're actually going to see cheap goods, more reliable production, more reliable supply chains. The next time we have some kind of catastrophe, whether it's a war or a pandemic, we won't be facing the shortages of things that, like, remember there was a period where we couldn't even make cars in the United States because we didn't make microchips here. That era is coming to an end. We're going to be safer and more secure economically because of what we're doing today.
How about that? I feel better already. Thank you, John. John, come back soon. I appreciate you, sir. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.